everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter or X or whatever it is called nowadays. I can't keep up with it. I don't care about any of that, but we are back. It's been a long 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks. We changed some of the graphics. It is John Sapanaro out in Los Angeles, California, back from my trip around the world. And Matt Ibby Ibanez looking fresh with his new Mets gear, holding things down in New Jersey. What's going on, Ibby? How you feeling?
John, it's been a long. I know we just had the same conversation before we even hit record, but I got to say I'm very excited to be back. I've been waiting for this day. We've been talking like, what are we thinking this week? What are we thinking? We were still busy with a couple of things, catching up, sicknesses and things of that nature, but we're all good, both ends. I'm excited. I'm doing very well. Like I just said to you off air, I'm on break from school, so a much needed recharging, if you will. And I'm very pumped up because the offseason has started for our Mets officially. There is plenty to talk about. There is plenty to go over. And I got to say, like, I'm a little shocked, and maybe it's because you're a little bit tied up when it comes to the Jets and everything. But I'm very shocked that with all the absolute chaos and shit show that Mets Twitter has been since Monday, I didn't see my guy that much in many tweets or comments. So I'm excited because I get to hear your thoughts, first perspective on a lot of things. So let's get into this. Let's do it.
Yeah, look, there's plenty to talk about. Thank you to everybody who, there's a lot of people in the comments, a lot of people in the chat already. Shout out to everybody who's watching. Thank you for turning your notifications on and following us on social media so that you knew when the break was going to come to an end. Yes, I was in Australia for almost a month. Then I came back from Australia. I had COVID, and that was just brutal. I couldn't do the show then. And then at that point, I was like, hey, you know what, Ibby? Let's just wait one more week. The World Series will be over and we can fully dive into everything once the offseason has commenced. And I'm happy that we waited because now we don't have to have speculative conversations. We can have actual conversations about what the Mets have done. But first, want to jump into the comments, say hello to a lot of folks who are here. We got Keith Blacknick, we got Jeff Cohen, Chris Ferraro, we got Ant Rivera from Subway to Shea. Who else? We got Carlos Ortiz, we got Carlos Ramos.
We got a big one in here. We got Wardy in the house.
Is here. Cue the McNeil eating popcorn gift. We got Stevie Mack, Douglas Barnes. Who else? Did I miss anybody? Looks like that's all as far as the commenters go so far. Oh, we got Corey. What's going on? Normally, I don't run through the commenters, but it has been a while. So I wanted to make sure that I shouted out everybody. If you're watching and not commenting, that's all good. Welcome to the show to you guys as well. Of course, we have the QBC coming up in a couple weeks. I'm looking really forward to that. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. Plenty of stuff to talk about there as well. So I just want to get your feeling, actually, Ibby. You're right. I have been quiet on Mets Twitter, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was really just getting back into the swing of things. I had to do the Jets show the last couple weeks, even though I was kind of behind the eight ball in terms of my schedule and then a little under the weather, had to jump back to that because it was mid-season. And so I've just taken a little bit of a break. I didn't feel like I could have any thoughts on the managerial search until the managerial search unfolded. So now that it has unfolded, what are your thoughts on, I don't want to talk about Carlos Mendoza right now. I want to talk to you about how surprised you are that Craig Counsell is not managing the Mets or the Brewers. To me, that is the most confounding. When I saw that tweet, it was like, yeah, he's going somewhere else and they already have a manager. I was like, what? So to me, that's where I want to start. And then, of course, we can, translate that into Carlos Mendoza and Chris Ferraro just saying Ron Washington to the Angels, poor Buck. So we can talk about that, too, if you want. But starting on Craig Counsell, because I know you were on with Ant Rivera, Subway to Shea. You talked about it. So where were your thoughts when this all shifted?
Well, to shout out to Ann again, because he had me on and we talked about it. And at the time, we go based off of what we know. And what we know is based off of what the media and certain writers put out there. And the way things were trending and talking about money and things of that nature, I was very confident when I was on Ant's show. So I'm not going to back down from that. I thought that, Counsell was at like an 80-85% chance of being the manager of the Mets. And I felt confident when I said that. And then when this news breaks, And then you're like, okay, well, maybe it was Houston. Maybe Houston's going to be the place where he ends up because they wanted to talk with them and it makes a lot of sense and everything that was going on. And then, like you said, that tweet comes out. It's going to a place that already has a manager. And people were like, wait a minute, do you mean, has an existing manager or an exiting manager? People thought it was a typo at first. And it's like, no, existing. It's like, oh my God. And then you hear the Cubs and you're just like, and we talked about it when we texted the other day too. Like, I was shocked that the Cubs of all people, actually, you know what? I shouldn't say I'm shocked because they blindsided, when they hired Madden, they blindsided the previous manager as well. And now they're blindsiding Ross here and then going with.
Yeah. Shout out to Mark Healy, who will be at the QBC. He said, he put out a tweet that was like, something I'm paraphrasing. This is the second time that the Cubs have blindsided a manager in the last decade. So seems really like a real classy move. And like, yeah, dude, that's some dog shit.
It's shitty. It is. Like, and like, I think someone put it out today saying how, they flew out to Ross's house and he was completely blindsided when they told him. It's like, I mean, they had a solid year last year, you would think, but it's like, it's incredible. And I have no problem with Craig Counsell. When the whole thing came out, when it came about money and things like that, like, I don't have an issue with a guy going after cash, wanting to get the most. And the fact that he was able to get basically every single thing that he wanted. Like, he had a checklist and he was able to check off every single part of it by staying in the Midwest, going to a bigger market, getting a lot more money, resetting the market, like gets to stay near his kids, gets to watch his kids play in college. Like, all this, like, he was able to check off everything. So I'm not going to dive into my entire rant that I'll probably have later on when it comes to people's reaction to not getting Counsell and thinking that they missed out and not offering enough money and things like that. But I was shocked that the Cubs came out of nowhere. But also, this goes to show you that we as fans, we only know as much as the media, whatever the media is given to put out, that's what we really know. Because if the idea of the Cubs was there and people actually knew, writers actually knew these things, it would have leaked out. This came out of nowhere. So everybody was completely shocked. So again, always be careful when it comes to information that is put out there, because it's not always going to be 100% proper, because there are other things going on behind the scenes that haven't been told to somebody that has the power of the keyboard or followers to put out there. So, that's the main thing I want to put out there in terms of that. But as for Craig Counsell, good for him. Shocking nonetheless, because it is the Cubs, but good for him.
Yeah, I got to echo a lot of what you're saying there, but I'm going to jump into the comments really quick. You were surprised. I was surprised. Everybody was surprised. But Jeff Cohen, David Ross was the last to know, which I feel bad nuts. For him. Chris Ferraro, saying the same thing. Hey, poor Rossi. And then also I agree to an extent, poor Brewers fans, because I think some Brewers fans were resigned to the fact they were going to lose Counsell. I don't think they thought they were going to lose Counsell to the division, to a rival, to a team that might be on the come up. Like, I don't think that they realized that. I don't think they were prepared for that. Keith Blacknick saying the Cubs walked up behind their manager and chloroformed him. Yes. Carson in the house saying Counsell's from Indiana, so it makes sense, but it came from nowhere. What the Cubs did to Ross was completely fucked up, though. So that seems to be really the consensus here. And Stevie Mac 23 saying the Brewers owner's comments after the news was hilarious. I agree with that. Oh, and Ant Rivera, I think this is coming through right now. Joey Cora leaving the Mets for the Tigers. I need to be a guest in your next podcast to discuss this very important transaction. Very, very tongue-in-cheek, but we do need to have Ant on, as well as we need to get Wardy back on the show, and Carson and people who are here, everybody, comments and everything. But the one thing I did say about Craig Counsell about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, I tweeted out, I said, look, I don't know. I quote tweeted somebody's thing and I said, look, I don't know what is true, but I am always of the school of thought that I want the guy who wants to be here. That is my philosophy when it comes to players. It's my philosophy when it comes to managers. It's my philosophy in baseball. It's my philosophy in the NFL. It is my philosophy, period. So like you, I'm happy for Craig Counsell. It is rare in baseball, in sports, in the business of sports that you get everything you want. Sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things for money, or you have to sacrifice money for certain things. Craig Counsell was able to come out with the most money, resetting the market for his other fellow managers and managerial candidates, which was important to him. He got to stay in the Midwest while also going to a bigger market, and he got to stay close to family. You already touched on those things. He checked all of those boxes, and good for him. But I will say that I don't care that he didn't come to the Mets. Did I think he's do I think he's a good manager? Yeah, I do. I think he's a good manager. Do I think the Mets should have talked to him? Absolutely. I think they should have talked to him. Do I think the Mets should have tried to sign him? Sure. You at least want to gauge the interest of the person and say, hey, look, do you want to come here? Do you want to manage the team? This is the direction we're going. We got more money than everybody. We got Steve Cohen. We're building this giant facility in the 50 acres surrounding Citi Field, apparently. We're doing all this stuff. Are you interested? And to me, whatever the guy says, if you're getting the vibe that he's not all in, I don't want you. And this is not, Monday morning quarterbacking the situation. I would say that about anybody. I want the guy who wants to be here. On the Jets show, we talked about a lot of the late transactions the Jets could have made at the end of the offseason. And one of them was DeAndre Hopkins. And it was like, do we want to get Hopkins? We can add him in. Like, we could do this, we could do that. And it was like, I don't know, man. It seems like everything that Hopkins has done in the media, he doesn't want to come play for the Jets. He doesn't want to play in New York, New Jersey. He wants no part of it. So we were all like, you know what? Screw it. Like, why want it? Like, you don't want to bring that guy in who's just chasing the bag. And I'm not saying that Counsell was just chasing the bag, but it's clear that the Midwest and his family and all of that meant a lot to him. And he got his money and he got to stay in a place where he really wanted to be. And so good for him, but I'm just going to say, I don't care. And it's on to Carlos Mendoza. I'll be the first one to mention it. I don't know a ton about Carlos Mendoza. Like, I know who he is. I know he's been the bench coach for the Yankees for the last, I think it's 4 or 5 years, something like that. But I don't know a thing about him. I know he's young. He's 43 years old. I know that he kind of fits the mold in that sense of what you would probably want a younger manager in terms of what Stern wants and where they're trying to go to and build. I think it's a little strange in that, I don't know what happens now with Eric Chavez. And, I don't think any of these guys are an unbelievable get or an unbelievable loss, right? To me, the manager matters, but it doesn't matter as much as people make it sound like. I was on this show on record saying I didn't want Buck Showalter. Then I was on this show saying, hey, you know what? I think I was wrong. I think Buck did a pretty good job. And he did his first year. And then his second year, he was the scapegoat and he didn't do some things great and the team wasn't good and the players didn't play well. And now he's gone. So, I don't know how much of a role they play in the modern game. So to me, he's a good baseball guy, and I trust David Stearns above everything else. That's for me where I would go with that. I trust Stearns. If Stearns likes Carlos Mendoza, I like Carlos Mendoza. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I said this on Twitter, and it blew up because obviously it was a sensitive topic for many on Monday. And my tweet was simply, David Stearns is considered one of the brightest minds in the game. People on this app agree with that. Yet the same people want to question his hire of manager. Make up your minds. Like I said on Ant's show when he asked me that I, at the time, had no idea who Carlos Mendoza was. When it was said that he was being interviewed, I even said, I don't know who this guy is. But when we talked about it, I said, odds are it's probably going to be Counsell or Mendoza. Me and Ant both agreed on that. And, looking at it now, I don't care. And I know that that's going to offend some fans and some older fans who think that the manager still is what it was, 20, 30 years ago. And it's just not. Like, you're handing in a lineup card. And I said it on Ant's show. I'll say it here. You're basically just managing personalities. The most important thing is just managing the clubhouse and being able to handle yourself in terms of speaking, before, after games, because this is New York and baseball is big here. And it's talked about 24/7, 365 nonstop. So that's the biggest thing to me. But overall, when I see things like, Mad Dog Russo saying how, Bruce Bochy and, managing with your gut and all this nonsense and, poking fun at the Mets for going with Mendoza, first timer, I go, you know what? You can talk about Bruce Bochy all you want. And my response is going to be Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, Nate Evaldi, Chapman showing up good, the bullpen being lights out. Like, I can say all these things, Evan Carter showing up, like all these things, because players are what matters. I know I just saw Carson put in the comments as well. It's the players that matter here. My focus is on David Stearns. My focus is on the players that he's going to bring in. So that is what I think fans should be focused on. Not so much about the guy who's going to be handing in the lineup that's most likely being given to him from the guys up top. Let's focus and believe, I should say, let's believe in the guy that everybody wanted, who's considered, again, one of the brightest minds in the game, who's now leading the charge for this clubhouse, for this team in general, in terms of how it's going to be built and constructed. I'm going to let that guy do his job. And this is the guy that he chose. This is the person he believes in. It's like, who am I to say anything? Like, we have nothing to go off of. Nothing. So what are we complaining about? That's been my biggest problem. Yeah. If there was like, and I hate that people are using track record for previous regimes to use as the end-all be-all for this one. It's like, oh, Mendoza, first time. Mickey Callaway, disaster. Carlos Beltran doesn't make it onto this
different
field.
Person making
Louis
the calls.
Rojas. Different person making the calls. You cannot lump this in with the same thing. And I'm not going to lump this in as same old Mets. Same old Mets for people also, that are saying it. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Like, just to be fair, I said what I said about Buck Showalter, and I know he's a lightning rod when you're talking about the Mets right now and the Mets season that wrapped up, and I'm sure that's going to continue until we have a clean slate starting next year. Everybody talked about Buck Showalter, slam dunk hire. Buck Showalter makes the most sense. What do the Mets need? The Mets need a manager with experience and a track record of success. Now, you could argue whether or not Buck Showalter never got to the ultimate success and he's more of a facilitator and they're the team that wins after he leaves and all that stuff like that. But the Mets went out and got a guy who was a manager of the year multiple times in both leagues. They went out and got a guy who wins a lot. They went out and got a guy who's well-respected, who everybody knows. They checked every box. And now 2 years later, they're looking for a new manager. You don't know. Did anybody know the manager of the Braves before he became the manager of the Braves? What about when the Phillies went out and got Joe Girardi? I wanted Joe Girardi for the Mets. I was wrong. Oh, my God. How could they let Girardi go? It's because the Wilpons are cheap. They wouldn't go out. They wouldn't pay Girardi. Look, now he's in Philadelphia. Have the Phillies gotten better without Joe Girardi, with a guy that nobody ever heard of before?
Yeah.
So, you look at this, you can't have it both ways. And I see a lot of comments, and we'll get to some of them here in a few. But this one from Douglas Barnes kind of sets it up. He says the day the manager of the manager who could actually manage is long since over, sadly. It's not to say that the manager has no impact. I'm not sitting here saying the manager doesn't matter. Just send the lineup card down in a fax machine and then just to let the players go out there and then the front office makes changes from the bullpen phone. I'm not saying that there's not a feel to it in game. There's an aspect of it that matters, but we are getting, with every year that passes on the calendar, we are getting further and further away from the managers like Bruce Bochy, like Dusty Baker. We're getting further and further away from them. So I saw Carlos said, Bruce Bochy and the Texas Rangers are laughing about the manager doesn't matter. Maybe Bruce Bochy does matter a little bit, but the new age of managers, they don't matter as much. They're like generic create-a-player guys. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It'd be like, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but like in some aspects, these throwback guys, maybe there is an intangible. Maybe Bruce Bochy does help a little bit. And the guy's got like 4 World Series now, whatever, 4 or 5 World Series. So like maybe there's something there. But the managers that are coming up now, the managers who you're going to be able to get on a yearly basis, they don't fit that mold. They're not that kind of guy. And there was no Bruce Bochy, by the way, to go get for everybody who wanted a manager with experience. Everybody wanted the manager with experience who had a track record of winning, who never won a World Series with Buck Showalter, and then everybody turned on him immediately. What is Craig Counsell? He's a manager with a track record of winning with no World Series, whose teams choke, other people's words, not mine, in the playoffs.
Was he 1-9? Whatever it was.
But everybody wanted him. So you can't. To say and I understand part of it. You want the name. You want the person you know. But to say you don't know. I don't know. You don't know. No. Nobody in the comments knows. Nobody in the media knows. Honestly, the one that I hope knows, I hope David Stearns knows a little bit. I hope he went and got the right guy to communicate with the media and communicate with the players, because that's what the job is. Communicate with the players, communicate with the media, and you can be successful if you win, if your players are good.
Exactly. It's all about the players. You have to have if you have good players, that in turn helps a manager. Are there going to be ups and downs with a first year manager? Of course there is. But at the same time, I believe it was like 85%, if not more, of the managers that were in the playoffs this year were first time managers with that team when they were first hired. It's like things take time. You can be molded into being good. I hate the fact that it's automatically assumed because it's the Mets and it's the first time, it's going to automatically be a failure. I think that's improper. The most important thing for this team is to get better from a roster construction. So when this team is able to play better, it makes the manager in turn look better. To your point before, I guarantee you that you could ask the diehest of diehard baseball fans to try and name every manager of every single team in Major League Baseball, and they would have a hard time doing it, even for the better teams. I'll never forget, and I can admit this. I was watching a couple of years ago when the Diamondbacks got hot and they made the playoffs one year, and they showed the manager, and it was Torey Lovullo. I was like, who the hell is Torey Lovullo? I had no idea who the guy was. Now, granted, I'm not watching a lot of Diamondbacks games, but at the same time, it's like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I've never heard of him, but he took that team. They made the playoffs, and then flash forward a couple of years, and now they're making it to the World Series. Like, you are like, everyone doesn't just get birthed into experience. Whenever you start at a job, like, you have to learn sometimes on the job to get better at something. So it's like, you're not always going to be able to be gifted someone who has World Series experience and that type of pedigree like a Bruce Bochy. Again, that wasn't even available. So again, you had the experience with Buck, didn't work. You had the experience with guys who had first year managers and it didn't work. So what? You move on. It's what fits best in that given situation. When Craig Counsell goes elsewhere, guess what? Every other option you have is basically someone that is of the first year, their first try, their first go around. Now, I guarantee you, someone's going to hop into the comments and say Ron Washington. Well, it's like, yeah, well, he didn't have the greatest of track record, and then he has this whole thing that happens in Texas. Hasn't had a job since. Now he goes off to the Angels. So be it. This is what David Stearns wants. I'm backing it. I'm for it. I'm going to allow things to play out because, again, we have one of the smartest minds backing our team now. Why am I going to shut this guy down on his first move? That makes absolutely no sense to me. Zero.
I'm going to jump back into the comments first with this one, just because I think it's timely. Chris Ferrara saying, hit the like button. Yes, hit the like button if you like the conversation and what we're doing right now. And then on a serious note, back to, really this conversation about Mendoza and Counsell and where the Mets went. And Paul Revere agreeing with you. I think the money in the trades to get Seager and Simeon and Montgomery made them a winner. I didn't see Bochy hitting any homers. Stevie Mack saying at least Mendoza had good practice last season with Boone getting thrown out of so many games.
True. No, to that point, seriously, Stevie Mack, that's a good point, mainly because on The Athletic today, they put out an article talking about how when the Orioles went through their entire process of trying to hire someone when they hired Hyde, they said that, when he was on the bench and doing things, like, he was able to take over in spots where managers were thrown out. And they do use that to get an idea of what guys can do in those spots to get a better understanding. So I know it was said as a joke, but it did work into a process. And I wonder, and I'm curious if it did work into the Mets process, mainly because let's flash back to Sandy Alderson. I know for many, myself included, not a name we like hearing the most, but Sandy, when they hired Mickey, and then they fired him, what's the one thing that they said after that happened? We wish we did a deeper search in terms of why we hired this person. They didn't go as deep as they should have. So again, I'm trusting that they went deeper, and this is ends up being the person that Stearns wanted the most.
Chris Ferrara was saying, I think I heard on the Mets pod it was 24 times Boone was thrown out. So, I mean, that is a sample size. I mean, that's a chunk of time, all jokes aside. Yeah. Keith Blacknick saying that he punched the like button, and Keith is a very calm person, but here as we get closer to the QBC, that tensions run high and stress really goes through the roof. I'm just kidding. No, there were a couple good points here that I do want to bring up from Ant Rivera, from Subway to Shea, because I think, and then from Carson, because I think these two things sum up the entire feeling. Whether you like this hire, don't like the hire, are confounded by the hire, wanted Counsell at all costs, didn't want Buck fired, wanted Carlos Beltran, like whatever you wanted, I think these two comments are important. Subway to Shea Ant says, as soon as Carlos Mendoza puts on that Mets jersey, he has my 100% full support. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. We have to rally around a guy who is here now. He is the manager of this team. You have to have faith in Stearns, and you have to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, because otherwise, what are you doing? Like, we're all Mets fans. We want him to succeed. And that's what you need to hope for. And then Carson saying, Mendoza seemed like the only candidate that has seasoned experience in New York, which is a lot more important than the pedigree of his name. A first-time and a rookie manager are two different things. And I think that's important. When you talk about where he's at, where he's coming from, bench coach of the New York Yankees is a lot different than, like you said, with, Mickey Callaway. Mickey Callaway was a pitching coach, never had been a manager, never had been a bench coach. Louis Rojas, yes, they were grooming him for something, but then everything went awry and they had to make him be the manager. They didn't want him to be the manager. If they wanted to be the manager, they would have hired him in the first place. You don't get to your second guy. That's why, like, when you look at the way, a lot of that regime ended, when you have, like the Zach Scotts of the world. And, when you go from Carlos Beltran to Louis Rojas, and then when you go from Porter to Zach Scott, like, I know Zach Scott got in his own trouble and it was easy for them to kind of pull the ripcord on him. Mm-hmm. But they didn't want Zach Scott. They would have hired Zach Scott. Right. There was a reason why they hired him to be the number 2. They didn't think that he was ready for the job when they interviewed him and Porter. So, when you're thrust into these situations with these people who are not your first choice, that's a different thing than this guy who has been through the ringer. This guy who has experience in New York with the players, with the city, with managing a game, albeit 24 times or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, to me, all of that stuff, those extra little things matter more than who this guy is, what he was as a player. To me, honestly, Ibby, I don't want to sound like a dick, but I think a lot of people, and I'm not taking away from his success as a manager.
Right.
I think a lot of people our age and a little older remember Craig Counsell for being the guy with the weird batting stance. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's like, he's not like a superstar player, but because of how odd he was, like with his batting approach, he stands out in your mind. So it's always gonna be like, oh, Craig Counsell, what's he up to? Oh, Craig Counsell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a buzzword. And so, again, I'm not saying that to talk down his managing abilities, but I just think like that's how a lot of people recognize. It's name recognition more. Like, you're not watching the Brewers. When you said he's 1-9 in playoff series, like, people didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like, people don't know that. Like, most people are not following that. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also what is regurgitated to you as a consumer. And we as fans who love the game that are constantly on Twitter or wherever we get our information, constantly refreshing and getting things. It's like when you're hearing nonstop, and Craig Counsell's name was the one that was bantered about the most as this second coming, if you will. And again, I'm not trying to talk him down because, I thought he was going to be the manager here, but I think we have to realize that when you're told something over and over and over again, it's common to think that when you hear something over and over again, that you start to believe it. Like, and you're hearing how great he is and all these things. So the fact is, nobody in this chat, nobody on Twitter had heard of the name Carlos Mendoza until 5 days ago. Not a single one. No one knew. And then 5 days later, everyone hates the guy. How can you hate the guy? You don't even know the guy. So again, relax, take a deep breath. There are so many more things that are a lot more important for this team, from the starting pitching to the bullpen to the outfield to DH. There's a lot of things that really matter from the day to day. Okay, That's what your focus should be on. The fun starts, the GM meetings are talking, whatever it is. Scott Boras throwing out his puns, all that nonsense. That's starting up, moving in towards December. We'll start seeing a lot more action. That is what matters. I don't know about you, but I, for one, am done with manager talk because I am worn out over the last 72 hours or whatever it's been talking about it.
I'm going to ask you one more thing about
God
the
damn it. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to ask you this because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're going to have a real answer to this. It's just your feelings. I got to admit that right now from the jump.
Okay.
How surprised do you think David Stearns was that Craig Counsell chose to go to the Cubs? Like, how surprised, not that he wasn't coming to the Mets,
right,
but that he chose to go elsewhere that wasn't Milwaukee or the Mets. Like, do you think Stearns was like, okay, well, he's either going to go back or he's going to come here? Like, what do you think, like, gut feeling?
Well, I mean, based off of what he said when asked that question, they were like, what are your thoughts on Counsell? And he was like, I'm pretty sure he said, like, I'm as shocked as anybody else is. Mm-hmm. And, I think the things that he said, I'm going to choose to think that it is upfront and honest because I think a lot of his answers have been that so far. So when he said, when it comes to Craig, and he has all the respect in the world for him, that he wasn't sure when having those conversations how committed he was to the idea of coming to New York because he is so family oriented. I think he was shocked that the Cubs came out of nowhere. And, when he said that Craig plays everything very close to the vest, but he's also very family oriented, that when that opportunity comes about, that, he's not like, he's shocked mainly because he didn't know it was coming, but he's not shocked because it makes a lot of sense because, like we talked about before, he got everything that he wanted. So I think he was more shocked that the Cubs came out of complete left field, and it happened like right under everybody's noses. But I think also, the reasoning why the Mets didn't go, all out in terms of money was because they knew that he was getting a serious offer from a place that they knew or had an inkling that he was going to end up taking because it made too much sense for him because of those family ties and how much that played into it for him. So I think, again, shocked that the Cubs came out of nowhere, but not shocked that he ended up going there because of situation.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to this one. Keith kind of said it a couple different times, and I think this is partially true, I think this covers a lot of things. There's a lot of gray area here. And he says Stearns kind of knew, but they had to announce Mendoza so they didn't look like they got leftovers. I think there's some truth to there. I think what happens is I think Counsell probably comes back to Stearns out of respect for the fact that they worked together in Milwaukee and said, like, hey, I'm going to the Cubs. And it's like, okay, great. And then the Mets can then go and they get their guy that they wanted, that they were interviewing, that they liked, which was Mendoza. And they get the opportunity to announce that, like, basically ahead of what happened, to get out in front of it. And, listen, it's not like Counsell owed him that or anything, and that's pure speculation on my part, but that does seem, to Keith's point, how the order of events kind of shook out. So, you know what? Let's jump into the break because we're a little over 30 minutes in. Yeah. We got plenty more to talk about. More stuff with the QBC. Keith's been throwing it in the comments. We also have to talk about Adam Ottavino being out, Brooks Raley being back, Hefner being back, Pete Alonso potential extension, where the Mets go from here. There's a lot of stuff that we can talk about, that we will talk about in the second half of the show. It is Till Mets Do Us Part. We're live on YouTube. We're live on X, and we will be right back in just a few moments. Yo, just like that, we are back with Till Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter and X. Of course, watching us on YouTube is the best way to become a full-fledged participant in the show. All your questions, your comments, your concerns, your thoughts, your heckles, all of that stuff coming in real time. We can see them. We can address them. We can, move throughout the conversation however we need to. You might even take the conversation to a place where we didn't even expect to go. So that is the best way to interact with the show. But of course, we understand not everybody can do that. The show is long. So you can catch the entire show if you missed any of it on our YouTube channel, where it lives forever as soon as the broadcast is over. And of course, the YouTube channel is called Till Mets Do Us Part, so it is easy to find. You can also follow us at Till Mets Do Us Part or on our personal accounts, which are underneath our lovely images here on the screen. And if you can't do any of that and you just want to listen to the show, you can do that starting tomorrow. Courtesy of the Premier Podcast Network, wherever it is you get your podcast. If you're watching, give us a thumbs up and, let us know that you like what you're seeing and hearing and listening to and all that fun stuff. So, people are talking about the 20-second break versus the 10-second break.
Threw me off.
Okay, yeah, so I just want to address that really quick. There is actually no difference. There's no reason why it was longer, other than I wanted to change things up a little bit and have a little bit of continuity. On my Jets show, our song is like, there's a finite end to our song. Our song runs about 20 seconds. And so we always had it tied to the length of the break, and the length of the intro was tied to the length of the song. And here we did a shorter version of the song. It was just 10 seconds. And I was like, I think the song is kind of cool and I want to let the song rock out. And I want to give us the opportunity where, like, if we need to step away for a moment and refill water, you could do that a lot easier with, 20 seconds than you can with 10 seconds. So no, there's not more ads or anything like that. It's just 10 extra seconds because I wanted some continuity between the shows. And I think the 20-second break works a little bit better. But yes, and if you would like to buy some promo space during that time, you certainly can. Keith Blacknick, Hollywood Sap at it again. That's me. Just changing things up just for the good of no one. I want to talk about what's next. I want to talk about before we talk about the player personnel stuff, let's talk a little bit about what we found out with Jeremy Hefner. Somebody said it. I think it might've been Rail wanted to talk about it. A few other people mentioned it.
Sure.
I was very critical of Jeremy Hefner in the downfall of this season. I think he's done some good stuff. I think he's done some bad stuff. And I thought, honestly, if anybody deserved to get fired, it was Jeremy Hefner. That was my feeling. Just when you look at the way the pitching performed, is it a scapegoat? Yeah. Were they talented? Who knows? Did guys fall off cliffs? Maybe. But to me, I wasn't thrilled with what Hefner was able to do this year, and really over his entire tenure. So, Keith saying, who does Hefner have nude pics of in the organization? Because he seems to be untouchable. And I know you don't like arranged marriages, and that's what you're getting. Carlos Mendoza, congratulations. Welcome to the New York Mets. Here's your pitching coach. Yeah. Now, it's not like the NFL where, hey, we're saddling you with a defensive coordinator where you have to scheme together. But, I understand they're separate jobs, but I'm with Stevie Mack here. Time for a fresh start. Give me somebody else.
I'm always, like I said, I'm not one that likes the idea of saddling somebody with a person when they first come in. But at the same time, I'm guessing, I would think that there is some sort of conversation with Mendoza in terms of, look, we're thinking about keeping Hef. What are your thoughts on keeping Hef? Unless this is something where it's like, when someone first comes into a job, it's like you want to try to keep some continuity to see what works and then assess after the fact. But it does seem like the Mets in general do really like Jeremy Hefner, which is why he has survived as much as he has. Because would this be his third regime that he's with technically?
Yes,
I think. So again, that's not really heard of outside of like the greats when it comes to pitching coaches. But everyone has their opinions on the guy. I think, like you said, it's easy to scapegoat him because of things that have gone on with specific pitchers, like we've talked about on here before, specifically Tyler McGill, and others as well. But I know Minconi was on Twitter previously, and he was talking about how a lot of people want to kill the guy for all the wrongdoing, but they don't want to praise him for the good, and it's like, do you like you kill him for Drew Smith, but are you lauding him for Jose Quintana staying sharp once he got back, or no, you're just going to say, oh, Quintana's a veteran. It's like, well, then you kind of have to give a little bit here. You can't always put all the blame, but I understand.
But I love Minconi. Like, obviously he's been a guest on the show, friend, but I have to disagree a little bit there because I do think veterans matter. And I don't know if it's because I have my NFL hat on because we're in the middle of the football season and I do the Jets show and that was yesterday. But as a Jets fan, I'm so tired of these guys. Like, you talk about like, oh, well, Adam Gase was the offensive coordinator for Peyton Manning when he won a Super Bowl. Oh, shut up. Like, no, it didn't matter. You could have been the offensive. Peyton Manning was the offensive coordinator.
Peyton Manning was yes.
And to a lesser degree now, we're dealing with this thing with Nathaniel Hackett, and he won two. Aaron Rodgers won 2 MVPs under Nathaniel Hackett's tutelage. Well, Aaron Rodgers is maybe the best physically gifted quarterback we've ever seen. He also won 2 MVPs before he ever met Nathaniel Hackett.
Right.
So, like, I do think there's something to be said about a veteran's ability to be a veteran and know what they want. Like, Keith saying here, does the good outweigh the bad? And so I think you have to grade on a curve. Like, I do think Mincone's fair for saying like, okay, well, do you give him credit for like you hate on him for Drew Smith, but do you give him credit for, X young pitcher who showed strides like Jose Buto? Do you give him credit? Like if that's your argument, right? Like if that's your argument, or even Senga, who's not a young pitcher, but is young to the MLB. So like, do you want to give him credit for those guys? Sure. But like, I'm not going to sit here and give him credit for Quintana. Quintana's been pitching his whole life. Yeah. Like to me, that's different. You know what I mean? Like, so, and it's not a Mincone thing. It's just like, my opinion, how I view it is, if you're going to compare, you have to compare apples to apples. It's got to be Drew Smith and Jose Buto. It's got to be Tyler McGill and maybe Joey Lucchesi. I don't think you could say, oh, well, Drew Smith and Jose Quintana. Well, Jose Quintana did what Jose Quintana does his entire career. That's what he did. Yeah. He just unfortunately wasn't healthy at the beginning. Then he came back and he was the same picture he's always been before he ever met Jeremy Hefner. So that's where I get frustrated a little bit with the situation here with a guy like Hefner. Like I don't know if he deserves all the blame, but I don't think he deserves any credit. And this is a good one from Keith. Compare home run apples to home run apples.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like I said, like this fits into what I've always said. I'm not a fan of just establishing something and keeping something there. I like starting completely fresh with new people. So, yeah, I mean, there's something in the water for our New York Mets when it comes to Hefner. It's like I said, he's surviving three regimes now. So, I mean, what am I going to say? Like, I'm shocked that he is staying, mainly because I would have thought it would have been a cleaning based off of how things have gone in the front office, as well as like you're starting to see other pieces go away. Like you're seeing Joey Cora leave. We'll see what happens with others. We'll see what happens with Chavez and things like that. But it's interesting to say the least that Hefner stays, because like you said, there's some good, there's some bad, there's a lot of inconsistent. Like the fact that he survives again, is it because there's not much out there and they think that he's the best of that bunch, which is why he stays? Like there's a lot of questions when it comes to that. So yeah, I will say I am shocked that he survived. And I would love to I mean, we're not going to get like a true breakdown, if you will, from Mendoza or anyone saying this is why we kept, but like it's a conversation down the road that I'm very curious to hear from people as to why it ended up being that way.
I'm going to jump into the comments here. There's a few different good ones. Shay saying, the only thing I could see, if we're going for Yamamoto, then Hefner is good in his development if he had a play in how Senga was handled. That's all I got for him. And honestly, having some continuity there might make sense. Hey, we like the way you were able to get the most out of Senga and acclimate him or help acclimate him to the major leagues. And look, it was a great ending. That's terrific. But also, like, I don't want to shortchange Hefner here, but like, I think other people could do that. I think other people were paying attention in the organization. Like, I don't think that's you're the pitching coach, you're in charge kind of thing. Subway to Shea, Ant saying, I never usually defend Hefner, but it's hard to work when his starters were hurt and Epler gave him crap in the bullpen. That is fair.
Fair.
I'm going to go more along the lines of what Carson said here. We agree often on Hefner. He hasn't developed everyone. Every single arm that has had success with the Mets had success before they came here. I really don't get it. The guy has done nothing for 4 years. That's what I always say. I said it at the end. Hefner did enough with Dominic Leone, so we were able to trade him for Jeremiah Jackson. That's a fair rebuttal. Fair rebuttal. No, you know what? I think when I look at it, I've always said I don't know who Jeremy Hefner made better objectively, sincerely made better. That said, let's move on from him because I don't want to beat the rest of this conversation, the rest of this show to death with Jeremy Hefner talk. Let's take these next two together, Ibby, so that we can kind of bunch them up and get in, get out. Two relief pitchers, one's gone, one's back. Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, your reaction.
Brooks Raley makes all the sense in the world. Adam Ottavino, it was shocking to me, mainly because it's like it was a player option. He loves New York, but then once you got a little bit more in-depth info and in terms of the conversation that he had with Stearns, basically saying, look, if you accept this, there's no promise that you're going to be here. We could very well trade you. So then he said, all right, well, I'm going to opt out and then take my chances elsewhere. And I think also playing into that might be him thinking, hey, the relief market's not all that great. Maybe I can catch on with somebody else and get a 2-year deal with a little bit more money. But I think the whole thing playing into him being told, look, there's an opportunity for you here, but there's also a shot we might trade you if you decide to opt in because it's not that much money. So he decided to take things into his own hands. I think a lot of people are happy he's gone. And I think it was time to move on as well. I know that the bullpen is bare. So anybody with a pulse is good for this Mets team, but I think it was time to move on for sure.
I'm just going to jump back real quick because this is true. It's a good point. Nobody brought this up. Joe K saying Hefner is starting to remind me of Dan Worthen, who survived like 5 managers.
It's true.
Yeah, man.
Very
Dan
true.
Worthen
Yeah,
was
Dan
just
Worthen.
like he was Teflon, baby. You trying to get rid of Dan Worthen? What? Dan Worthen will come for your family.
Oh, that's a good callback.
It is a good callback. So I tend to agree with you. I'm going to say this about both players and the Mets. That's Raley, Ottavino, and the Mets. Everything that transpired is smart for all parties involved. I think the re-signing or picking up Raley's option is a no-brainer. Raley pitched great for the Mets. Raley, over his last several years, is one of the best statistical left-handed arms out of the bullpen. He also showed you he could do a lot at the back end after they traded David Robertson. I think it made sense for, Raley to be here. There's continuity here. They're going to need arms in the bullpen. He figures to play a prominent role. For Ottavino, I also think it's smart. I think him testing the market in a down market makes sense. I think them being honest with him of like, yeah, we'll pick up this option, or if you pick up this option, we might trade you because we have to see what's out there and I'm not committed to anything. I think that makes sense for the Mets. And so I think being open and honest and communicative with the player is a fair thing. And that's how you build good rapport. Even if that player leaves, that player's agent or the next player that they talk to is like, hey, you know what? Stearns gave me an honest answer, man. I love playing in New York. He told me it was a coin flip whether or not I stay if I take that deal. And I wanted to be in control of where I'm going at this stage in my career. So, I think that that's smart. And I don't think he's some great loss. I also think fans were in some ways, there's Rupert Holmes, right, on Twitter, who seems to always defend everybody that the majority of Met fans don't like. He defends Vogelback. He defends Drew Smith. He defends Adam Ottavino. And I like him. I actually think he's a smart fan. And I see why he does it, because he does back it up with stats most of the time. He's right about certain things. But sometimes you're like, Jesus, dude, like stop trying to defend the indefensible.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like we don't need to defend. Like he's like, well, if you look at Adam Ottavino's FIPIP over the last 6 weeks, he's actually been really good. It's like, I don't care. What I'm watching is Adam Ottavino hang sliders and give up home runs. That's what I'm watching. Sometimes the statistics, especially in baseball, and especially for relievers, Hibby, sometimes stats lie. Now, they could lie to the positive. They could lie to the negative. You could look at a guy and go, I don't think he's having a good year. And then you're like, wow, you know what? outside of the, couple home run balls early in the season that inflated his ERA, it's actually been a great year. And sometimes you look at the stats and you're like, wow, this guy looks like he's having he's got a 3-1, but all of a sudden, every time he's in the game, he seems to blow the game. So I think that's a weird hill to die on to defend these guys. Like, do I think Adam Ottavino did some positive things over the time he was with the Mets? Sure. Do I think middle relief pitchers, like a lot of people are saying, bullpens are fickle and middle relief pitchers are even more fickle than that? So I agree. It's hard to get good ones and keep them and have them doing good things or whatever. But, I don't know. I don't think you can defend some of these guys when you look at what they produced for the Mets when the Mets needed them the most. So I think it's no big loss that we're losing Adam Ottavino, and I think good teams find ways to replace Adam Ottavino. I'm going to look at these comments real quick. I see you were active in the commens during.
I just threw one in there to respond to Carlos.
I love that. Ottavino learning to throw. Vogelback learning to throw a slurve. That's what I heard. That is what I heard. So look, I think Carson saying Ottavino is old as dirt and the pitch clock is going to end up killing him.
It definitely played a factor.
I think older pitchers who are not used to this, and he is a notoriously slow worker who can't hold runners on either. And, those are factors too, Ibby. And I don't want to dig a hole here for Rupert, but when you're sitting there going,
he'll dig himself out.
Well, hey, this guy only had a 3.4 ERA. It's like, but every time somebody got on first, it was a double.
Yeah.
Have we forgotten about that? Have we forgotten about the pitch clock violations, which are a factor? Those things aren't necessarily going to appear in the stats. That's not going to be his advanced statistics are not going to show you how many pitch clock violations he had or, how many times he hung sliders because he's worried about a pitch clock violation. But those are real things. Those are real things to be concerned with. So I'm happy Ottavino's gone. I think they could do better. I'm happy Rayleigh's back. I think he's a good pitcher. That said, Ibby, what is next for the Mets? I know we've got the potential talk of Pete Alonso extension. I don't necessarily want to address that straight away in this episode. I just want to do more of an overarching where you think they're going to go next sort of thing, because they have. You could argue that Pete's extension is high on the priority list. You could argue that, starting pitching and filling out a bullpen are even higher, getting a second power bat who's a left-hander. There's a lot of places they should go, could go. Where do you think the Mets are going to focus on now that the manager is entrenched, the president of baseball operations is here, they have somebody running the show? What do you think the Mets are? What do you think their order of operations is, basically?
Pitching, and more pitching. Very simple. I look at this roster, and for as much as people want to talk about the lineup and complain about the lineup and things like that, I think based off of the things that we've heard about how this team might be constructed for this year and then moving forward with money coming off and things like that, how they plan on building, utilizing the youth that they have coming up, I think that attacking pitching has to be done out of necessity. It needs to happen because this team has had a hard time developing arms down low and making a difference when they come up. Now, we all have high hopes and hopes that, Stewart and Hamill and Tidwell, we hope that these guys show out and do well. And Vassell, we hope that they do well, but we don't know. So outside of Senga and Quintana, and, you just lost Peterson as potential depth for a handful of months, but at the same time, I don't want to talk about Peterson and McGill on the top end of, I should say, on the back end of the rotation, or even the top end when it comes to depth. Those guys, and I said this to Chris in a conversation earlier. I was like, those guys to me are 9 and 10. We talk about needing 10 pitchers. Those guys are 9 and 10 for me, which says this team has to spend or get creative in some way when it comes to the pitching. I think that they will spend money when it comes to starting pitching, as long as it is financially doesn't matter as long as the age is proper. So yes, they're not going to attack 35-year-old pitchers anymore. That's not happening. They're going to attack things that make sense from the young side that they can have and build and be part of said core, which is why someone like Yamamoto and going in all in on him makes all the sense to me. But there are other needs. But I think that they can do that. But the focus, the true focus for this team, I would say A, B, and C is pitching. However it goes, whether it's starters or relievers, however they go about that in the beginning and go from there, it's whatever. This team is in dire need of arms. I said this on Ant's show. This offense did enough when the pitching was on. There was like few and far this past season where the pitching was sharp. Might have like a 7-game stretch or a 10-game stretch where the pitching was good. Mets are winning ball games. This team has no consistency when it comes to its pitching. It has to get fresher arms. And as Carson always says, it has to get younger. They can do that with certain players and still spend money and get better in that sense. But no matter what, we can talk about Pete all we want. We can talk about the ideas of potential outfielders or DHs. I think that falls secondary. They have to get pitching.
I agree with you. The reason why I want to back burner the Pete conversation specifically is because, look, everybody knows where I stand on Pete. I think the Mets need Pete. I think the offense is – you don't think the Mets need Pete. Take him out of the lineup and see how bad the offense looks then. The offense wasn't good with him, which is the argument people are making. Like, oh, the offense isn't good enough with Pete. We don't need Pete. Okay, take him out and let me know how you feel about that then. Take 45 home runs and an automatic 115 RBIs out of the lineup and let me know how you feel. So, but the reason why I table that is because Pete's under contract for this season. So it's not a priority for me. And what I mean by that is, look, Boris already spoke to Stearns today. And what that conversation could have been was, hey, look, we've got other fish to fry. We do want to talk about an extension with you for Pete, but we can talk about that extension 2 months from now. We could talk about that extension before spring training. We don't have to talk about that extension today because today we have to worry about putting a pitch together for Yoshi Yamamoto. Because today we have to worry about, are we going to look at an Aaron Nola or are we going to go and try to trade for Corbin Burns? Or are we going to go and, try to fill out get Yamamoto and fill out our 4 spot in our rotation with a guy like Seth Lugo on a short-term deal or an arm like that, right? Who would take a 1 to 2 year contract kind of thing. So there's a lot of machinations. Pete's the first baseman if they want him to be. If they don't trade him, Pete's the first baseman next year. So to me, that's why I think backburnering that part of the conversation is appropriate today. I'm with you. They need pitching. I would go all in on Yamamoto. I've said it before. I think he is the perfect fit
25
at the
years
perfect time, at the perfect age. You have Senga here now who can be a bit of a mentor to him. I think it makes so much sense. And Edward Flood saying, no matter how we break it down and deny it, it seems like Cohen isn't spending a lot of money this winter. Do you actually think we get the 3 starters we need? I don't want to see what we already have for multiple spots in the rotation. I am going to disagree with Edward on the fact that I think the Mets are going to spend money. The Mets are going to spend a lot of money. I don't think the Mets are going to spend money the way that they spent money last year because the Mets are not coming off of a team that was 101 wins and in the playoffs that they were trying to keep together. Now, I think the Mets are going to spend any amount of money it takes to get Yoshi Yamamoto. I think he will be a Met if he is okay with playing on the East Coast. I also think, and I don't know if this is the right move, the wrong move, the whatever move, you can argue this until you're blue in the face, but I think the Mets are going to at least inquire on Shohei Ohtani. I do. I think it's malpractice from Steve Cohen to not make a phone call, to not look into it. Now, do I think Shohei Ohtani is the best investment long-term, especially if he can't be a pitcher too? That's a different argument. I'm saying Steve Cohen is going to look at Shohei Ohtani, who is, by some accounts, the best baseball player who has ever lived, and go, okay, well, what does it take to get you to Queens? So, for guys like that, I think they're going to spend money. If you're talking about Juan Soto being truly available, in a deal, I think they could trade for Juan Soto and then try to maybe extend Juan Soto. So when you're talking about players in the prime of their career at the top of the market, the Mets are going to spend money. Are the Mets going to overpay to get Aaron Nola to be their number 3, they're not. They're not going to overpay him. They're not going to do that.
No.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They're not going to give up the compensatory pick and give him, more a 7-year deal. That's not going to happen. No. Not when they can go out and get a lesser pitcher, quote unquote lesser pitcher, on a shorter term deal that doesn't have a qualifying offer attached to them, so like a Lucas Giolito, right? I keep bringing him up. People are like, he's a scrub. Lucas Giolito is better than Tyler McGill. He's better than David Peterson. He's better than the 9th, 10th depth piece that you're talking about. Ibby, if I told you can get Lucas Giolito for, a 3-year deal with an option to be the 5th starter in your rotation, you're probably going to say yes to that deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's a difference between spending the money, just throwing it around everywhere, and spending the money with intent. And when you have a Manny Machado, a Bryce Harper type free agency, that's when you spend. That's when you go out and you get the people. That's when you go out and you spend the money to supplement your team. And Carlos says, don't spend trying to buy a World Series, rebuild the rotation, add bullpen, add 2 players, let the youngsters develop. Do not try to buy a World Series. I'm not saying buy a World Series. You still have to buy players. You cannot add to the rotation, add to the bullpen, add 2 players. How are you doing it without spending money? And not trading any of the youngsters that you want to develop. How are you doing it? You have to spend money. They're going to spend money. It's just they're not going to throw money around. What they did last year was throw money around because, and none of us can blame them, they thought they were going to win the World Series, Ibby. Yeah. And if they would have won the World Series this year, no one would have gave a shit what the payroll was.
Right.
Or how old the guys were.
Right. Yeah, it's just, I look at it and it's like, they're going to spend, because again, they have to, no matter what, like, because there are so many holes, they have to spend money. They're going to spend, like you said. And I think Ant said it before. He said, smart and savvy. Now, I'm going to say this now because I know how Mets fans are. You know how Mets fans are. You already saw it when you saw something that could be categorized as a savvy hire in Mendoza. Because we don't know, but that could be considered savvy down the line. Just like getting a certain bullpen arm or a certain starter could be a savvy move because you see something that others don't or whatever, what have you. They come here, they thrive. Smart and savvy also means a lot of times players you're not familiar with. So I'm saying this right now, Mets fans. Odds are Stearns is going to bring in some people that you don't know much about or you might question the move. Please let it play out because, again, smart and savvy does also come with a price of being patient, okay? Because you have to let it play out because you might see something as, oh, this guy's fucking terrible. Why are you getting this guy? And then he goes out there and he puts to a 2 ERA in the bullpen. Like, just relax. That's what smart and savvy often means at times. But yes, and I said this before, I forgot who I had a conversation with, but when it comes to free agency, I do not expect this team to be in unless they get shut out completely, which I don't think is going to happen. But they are not going to be in on players that have qualifying offers attached to them outside of Shohei Ohtani. That is the one where it's like, if you want to go all in, and to Carson's point, he said before, the guy could wake up one day, says, I want Carlos Correa. He threw the money at him, didn't work out, but he still did it. Okay? Same thing can happen here. He could wake up one day and be like, you know what? I don't care. Shohei Ohtani, here's 12 years and $600 million. He could do that if he wants.
That money means nothing to him.
It means nothing to him.
So, I know we always say that.
The payback for Ohtani will be there regardless because it's a generational all-time player that would bring in God knows how many people to come watch him play over the next decade. Now, that's the exception. That's the one that I think that they will do it. But yeah, I don't see them in the market for the Snells of the world or the Nolas of the world, even the Josh Haders of the world. I don't see them in that market. I think they want to continue building. They want to spend money. And like you said, guys that don't have that attached to them, but also make sense. The Yamamotos of the world, the Jordan Montgomerys of the world, the Eduardo Rodriguez's of the world that, again, could make sense. 3-4 year deals. They're 30 years old, still fits within that window where it kind of makes sense for you as a team. It's better than signing 40-year-olds That's for sure. I'd rather have a 30-year-old than a 40-year-old like this team had been doing the past couple of years. So it's going to be calculated spending, but they're still going to spend.
I completely agree with that. And Edward, who's been, I don't know if he's commented before, and I apologize.
I think Edward's the first time. Welcome, Edward. Welcome.
I thought first timer. And if you are a first timer, welcome. And if you're not a first timer, I apologize and welcome back. Basically just saying 3 starters is a lot of money, though. I just don't feel like that's dialing back, which it seems clear they're going to do, but they have to get starters. I think the second part of your comment answers the first part of your comment. They have to get them. There's no other way to get them, and they don't have reliable arms waiting in the wings. The Mets are going to put together a team this season that can be competitive. Now, are they going to put together a team that is on paper favored to win the World Series? No, but the team that won the World Series wasn't on paper favored to win the World Series. The other team that made it to the World Series wasn't favored on paper to win the World Series. The Mets were favored on paper by some people to win the World Series, didn't even make the playoffs, had a terrible season. The Braves were the best team in baseball all year long. Where did they go? So it doesn't necessarily matter. That's when it's like you don't have to win the offseason. So to your point, Ibby, to spread that money around, you can creatively get these you can creatively round out a rotation. Like a guy who comes to mind, and I know he had a bad year. People are going to go, oh my God, what are you talking about, John? Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty at one point was one of the best young pitchers in baseball. He's 28 years old. He had a bad season last year. He gets traded to the Orioles. The Orioles are on a playoff push. He has a 6.70 ERA with them. They have to take him out of the rotation. Oh my God, why would you want this guy? Because he's 28 years old. I trust Stearns. I trust the people he brings in. Now, if you're going to say, hey, we're going to sign Flaherty on a 1-year prove-it deal, and he's going to be our 5th starter, I think you can do worse than somebody who has that kind of stuff and upside and potential. So when I say they're going to go out and get a minimum of 3 pitchers, Ibby, it might be a player like that, one that doesn't excite you, like you said, or one you've never really heard of. It might be a player like Lucas Giolito, and you're going to go, man, Lucas Giolito sucks, man. I don't like Lucas Giolito because he does so many home runs. But that's how you round out a rotation. Now, before that, they might go out and get Yoshi Yamamoto, pair him with Senga, pair him with Quintana, and they might surprise us and spend money and get, I'm just making this up, they might get Blake Snell or Aaron Nola. I don't think they will, but they might get a guy like Nola and Yamamoto and then go take a flyer on a guy like Flaherty. That might be their strategy. I'm not sure. I think all of those things are all on the table. And again, they're going to cost you money, but some are going to cost you more money than others. And I think that's entirely possible. I do. I think that's what we're looking at. That kind of thing. Where if
you said to me, I think any fan would take this, but it's like if you said, all right, you got Yamamoto, that's your big ticket this year, but you needed him badly. All right, now you got 3 pitchers in your rotation. Then you go out and you get one of, say, Jordan Montgomery or Eduardo Rodriguez. You get one of them, and then, you can look at the other types of like a Flaherty or a Lugo or like a back end guy or even a Giolito, like a back end guy like that. It's like, okay, now we're working with something. The biggest thing for me is getting guys that can provide innings. And yes. I'm just looking up some stuff right now because I'm curious. But I did
while you're doing that, everybody loves and raves about Bartolo Colon and his time with the Mets. Yeah. One of the biggest things that Bartolo Colon did in his tenure with the Mets was that he always pitched. He pitched all the time, and whether he was pitching a one-hitter or he gave up 6 runs, you know what he gave you? 5 or 6 innings. Every single time. Last year, when he was healthy, Cookie Carrasco, good or bad, you know what he did? Pitched innings. And those innings, even if they're bad innings, they save the bullpen. They save you for another day. What sunk the Mets ship this year was Verlander going 4, Scherzer going 3, Cookie Carrasco going 2. That's what sunk the ship.
1. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't have that. Not every day.
When you look at it, and I say, I know I did, people that follow the channel or the short, I've been putting out a lot of shorts lately of different stuff.
You have been putting out a lot of shorts lately. I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Oh, thank you. I hope you like them. I hope you like them.
No, they're great.
No, but I did one on Jordan Montgomery, and I'm going to bring up a point that I brought up in that, and I bring up Eduardo Rodriguez as well. It's like you want guys that give you innings. That's the biggest thing, that this team needs innings, especially if you go like you have Senga, great. But if you go and get Yamamoto, yeah, you're probably looking at a 6-man rotation because you got to worry about how you're handling them and if they're going to be able to take on that much of a change in terms of their innings. So you're taking that on. So I look at someone who over their career as an average of Eduardo Rodriguez, who averages based off of his entire career, 188 innings pitched. I look at Jordan Montgomery, 182 innings pitched in a given season. So it's like, yeah, are they the sexiest names? Are they the Nolas? Are they the Snells of the world? No, but they provide innings. Like, you don't have to have an entire rotation of superstars. You don't. You have to have guys that know how to pitch. I think those two names definitely make sense. And I could see the Mets going all out to try and get at least one of them. And if they also get Yamamoto, fantastic. Like, I think pitchers like that make a lot of sense, especially when you're in the midst of trying to groom younger pitchers within your system, like we mentioned before, the Stewarts, the Hamels, the Vassals that of the world, the Tidwells. Like, you want those guys to eventually be able to help you. If you get some of these innings eaters that, they can, on 3-4 year deals, it buys you some time. They still provide. They're good pitchers. They're seasoned pitchers. They have experience in big markets. They have experience when it comes to the playoffs. It's like, are they world beaters? No, they're not. But they go out there and they do a job. And like, that's what I think any Mets fan would take in comparison to what we got this past season.
Remember the 2006 NLCS?
Of course I do.
Remember Jeff Suppan?
I remember Jeff Suppan, and he stole money after that.
Jeff Suppan lighting up any radar guns. Jeff Suppan going to the Hall of Fame. Jeff Suppan doing anything of consequence after his career was over? Okay, so, these are the kind of players. When the Mets said that they were out on Aaron Judge this past offseason, do you remember the player that I said the Mets should be all in on a 1-year prove-it deal on the offensive side of the ball?
Who did you say?
Cody Bellinger.
You did say that.
Remember I said that?
Yes.
And people were like, that's crazy. Cody Bellinger sucks. These are the kinds of value deals you have to try to find sometimes.
Good teams find those players.
Good teams find those players. When we let Aaron Loop go, and everybody's like, how do you let Aaron Loop go? I said, Aaron Loop will never be that good again, ever. He had a career year of career years, and he's been okay. And could the Mets bullpen have used Aaron Loop last year? Sure, they could. Sure. Their bullpen was historically terrible. But good teams find the next Aaron Loop. Good teams find the next Cody Bellinger. Good teams find these players. Yeah, they'll go out, they find Arson Judge. These are the kinds of players that they go out and they find. Mitch Keller is a guy I'd target. Smart one. You know what I mean? Like, things like that, those kind of moves. Heimer Candelario is a guy that I would watch out for. Depending on where his market goes, because he's coming off the ACL, the Mets need offense. The Mets need a little bit more power. The Mets need a DH. Rhys Hoskins, 30 years old, power numbers through the roof. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you can get him on a 1-year deal, and you say, look, we're going to let you DH most of the time. You can really get that knee back to 100%. You don't even have to play the field. We got Pete. These are the kinds of moves that you need to look for them to make, and as they try to fill out a roster. And some of them, listen, I admit some of them are going to be unattainable because somebody might say, hey, we're going to give Rhys Hoskins a 3-year deal because we need power and we believe he's healthy and we're going to go for it. And yeah, the Mets will be priced out of that. But when you're talking about guys who are not going to get qualifying offers, these are the kinds of players that we're talking about. And I do want to bring this up. I don't want to pick on him, but I do want to bring this up, Ibby. Carlos said earlier that he doesn't want to buy a World Series, but then he told you that this is the rotation that he wants. Corbin Burns, Senga, Yamamoto, Eduardo Rodriguez, or Aaron Nola. Good thing not both, and Quintana. So you don't want to buy a World Series, but you do want to buy 2 of the 3 top starting pitchers on the market and then trade for probably the best available starting pitcher on the market who would be available via trade. If you want to say, Tyler Glasnow will probably be available too. And I think Glasnow is probably better than Burns today. But you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going to get all those guys. Like, probably not. And is that buying a World Series? I don't know.
It's being a little bit aggressive, but I know what Carlos was trying to say. And he mentioned it before. It was like, he thinks that they have to buy pitching and go high end with spending when it comes to pitching because he wants to be able to let the kids play and, let them grow in that sense. But it's also like, well, when you're trading for guys, you're going to have to give up certain players as well. Do I think you have to give up that much for a Burns because he only has 1 year left? Probably not. And everyone knows that the Brewers aren't going to pay him. So they're kind of up against a wall. in that sense, but it's still, it would cost something. So it kind of foils a little bit of plans, but I think I understand where he's trying to go when he says it. But regardless, a lot of money and throwing it, saying it right after not buying World Series, I get where that can be a little bit misconstrued, if you will.
Yeah. He followed it up by saying, John, you don't have to rebuild the lineup this offseason. The rotation, yes. The lineup, no. You have gems in the farm. But again, you're going to lose some. If you go get Corbin Burns, I know he's not going to cost you everything because he only has 1 year left, but you're going to lose some of those gems.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like, give me Tyler McGill for Corbin Burns. You know, they're going to ask you for, give me Luis Angel Acuna. That's what they're going to say.
And again,
they're going to say, "Give me Ronnie Mauricio."
The worst part of, and this isn't towards you, Carlos. Like the worst part of the offseason now is having to deal with the idea of trades and what people are going to be saying when it comes to certain players and understanding. It's like, look, would I trade for Juan Soto? Absolutely, it's Juan freaking Soto. But people need to understand something. Ready?
Any player that
Here's
is
the issue,
though. Prospect that is not Alvarez for Juan Soto.
Here's a problem with that though. The Padres are broke. That's what everyone goes to. Like they're not going to pay the $30 million this year. They have to get rid of them. They have to take something. Well, it's like, yeah, but they're going to give someone that's going to give what they.
Oh no, you guys. Ibby froze in the middle of his point. I'm going to drop Ibby out of the room here for a second and see if we can get him back here. Oh my goodness. Ibby, if you can hear me, we can't end the show until you're back fully functioning because I wanted to get to this Ibby point, man. In the meantime, we'll go to your comments. Carson responding to Carlos saying, you don't have to rebuild the lineup. I'm sorry, what? And then we got Keith Blacknick saying the lineup needs to be bolstered. And then Corey was asking, how much prospect capital is it going to cost? I don't think the cost would be prohibitive to get Corbin Burns, if that's what you meant. But I do think the cost would be enormous, 1 year left or not, to try to get Juan Soto. Ibby,
where was I? I forgot where I was. Oh, no,
you were
Padres, yes.
Padres are cash broke.
Cash broke. So people want to talk about Juan Soto and potentially it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but I'll have to double check on this. The Padres are losing a lot on the pitching side. I want to say they're losing upwards of like 500 innings, 600 innings based off of all the guys that are going to be filtering out of the team through potential trades and free agency. So it's like, if they're going to be asking for anything in return, it's going to be pitching because they have to fill in those spots. Because again, they need innings and they have no money. So it's like, we don't really fit that. Like that's the whole, like we don't fit that whole, because we're trying to build our pitching. We don't really have top end pitching to offer. We like the arms we're building, but I don't think they're going to be, on the top shelf of what the Padres are going to try to attain or what somebody might be able to give them for Juan Soto. So that's why I think, just saying in general, the idea of trades and what people think is going to be so attainable is not going to be as simple as people think.
I also think that this, with respect to Chris, is not as simple as people think. Just sign Soto next year. If you want the guy and the guy is available, you go get the guy. I know trades suck. You don't want to give up prospects. You don't want to give up pieces. You don't want to give up 3 for 1, 4 for 1, whatever it might be. You don't want to do that. If you want the guy, you have to go get the guy when you can get him. And sometimes that'll mean trading for them. Other times, yeah, you just wait. But you know what? Look, Ibby, the Padres have to trade somebody. If the Padres trade Juan Soto, just making this up, to the Yankees, you think the Mets can just sign Juan Soto next year?
Well, probably not. Since it's the Yankees and I don't think they have any money, then yeah, I think they could. But
right, but
I get what you're saying.
What I'm saying. Like,
I get what you're saying.
If they trade him to a team on the come up, if they trade him to the Cubs, if they trade him to and they're not linked to any of these teams in particular, but trade him to the Seattle Mariners, who apparently have money to spend all the time. Let's say Seattle's targeting Shohei, right? That's what everybody says. Seattle's going to get Shohei Ohtani. They're going to be sleepers for Shohei Ohtani. So that means that they have $500 million burning a hole in their pocket. And now Shohei Ohtani signs with the Dodgers. You don't think Seattle's going to try to get Juan Soto? And you don't think they're going to try to pay Juan Soto after they give him whatever trade capital they have to give up? It's not that easy. You know what I'm saying? It's not that easy to just say, go get that guy next time.
Yeah.
There's not always a next time. Go get the guy that you want when you need him. And Keith Blacknick saying Sapp is right, which is why I pulled that up because I need validation. A lot of people giving me shit for that. And listen, I understand, to properly build out the farm, you want to make sure that you have players, right? You have Acuna, you have Williams, you have Gilbert, and not all these players are going to pan out. They're not all going to pan out. So you have to be okay with trading some of them. You really do. You really have to be okay with trading some of them. The only one that I would not trade, Ibby, and you could disagree, there is one player I would not trade, Alvarez. Alvarez is the player I will not trade, period, end of story. The second closest for me right now, just in terms of what I've watched with my own eyes, and I'm not saying he's untouchable, he's not on that level, the next one is Mauricio. I think Mauricio is a legit hitter, legitimate. And so, look, what Jet Williams is doing is fantastic. He reminds everybody of Dustin Pedroia. That's terrific. I agree. That's awesome. Acuna's got the name and the pedigree, and everybody in his family is a professional baseball player for 8 generations. I get that. I think they could both be really good major league players. I'm not saying I would just trade them to trade them, but if you're telling me that I could trade Acuna to headline a package to get Juan Soto tomorrow, I'll fly to New York. I will drive Acuna to the airport, and I'll pay for the whole thing. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Juan Soto's 24 years old. He's fucking Ted Williams, dude. Do people not realize how good Juan Soto is? People don't realize how good Juan Soto is. They really don't. They don't understand. Jesus
Christ. You're comparing him to Nick Madrigal? Oh, God, man. Come on.
Also, listen.
I get it. Okay? I get it. But
sometimes people who are 5'6" can be good hitters.
I really like Jet Williams. I'm hoping it's not a Nick Madrigal situation, but I know Carson has his feelings, so I was just messing with him in the comments. But if it comes down to it and you're telling me I can get a legit difference maker, look, I've always been someone where if you think that a team is going to be able to get maximum value when there's only 1 year left on a deal, you're nuts. Like I can point to Francisco Lindor, I can point to Mookie Betts, I can point to a lot of players that they got returns, but they didn't get returns that everyone thought that they were going to get. I know Juan Soto is generational. He's not going to get the return that the Padres gave up to the Nationals to obtain him because he had a lot more time. The Padres think they're going to recoup that. It's not going to happen. It won't.
They are not. It's very similar to the was it the Braves? The Braves traded for Mark Teixeira and then traded Mark Teixeira to the Angels. Is that the timeline of events?
Say that one more time. It was.
I think the Braves traded to Texas to get Mark Teixeira.
Yes.
And then they traded Teixeira to the Angels mid-season.
Something like that.
And then he signed with the Yankees after that.
Yes, and everyone thought he was going to go to Baltimore. Yes.
Right. But what I'm saying is, and it was a little different because when the Braves acquired Teixeira, I think he only had 1 year left on his deal. But then they traded him mid-season that same year, and they didn't get back nearly half the players. Like you can't expect to recoup your loss because you made a move. Like you can't. I don't know. To me, like you can't worry about that. Subway Shay, Soto for Beatty straight up in MLB The Show.
Yeah, I mean, simple enough. Like I could just name one player. Like the Nats ended up getting James Wood from the Padres, I believe he's number 7 in baseball when it comes to overall prospects. It's like you're not getting that back now. You're not going to get it. So it's like no matter what, you're going to get less. You're going to get something, but you're going to get less if they do deal him, whoever it may be. They're going to be giving up a lot less than what the Pods give up in order to obtain him. Is the main thing.
This is a good way to go out, Ibby. Rail saying, I'm just glad to know Stern said they're still discussing tendering Vogie. That was a Freudian slip there. If 1 week from today they offer him a contract, Mets Twitter is going to explode.
It's already exploding, Rail. It's the place is an absolute cesspool. Like, look, I'm happy that, some of my tweets have taken off. I am, but like at the same time, like I sent the message to Minconi because he retweeted my tweet, and I was like, thanks for the boost, because I know I'm going to get a lot of people in my comments now, and I turned it to Captain America, like I can do this all day, and literally I was doing it all day, and I was like, this is fucking exhausting, but at the same time, it's like some people, it was great back and forth. It was, and I was happy with it, but there were a lot of just irrational people. And again, that's what Twitter is. It's filled with it, but it's like, Jesus Christ, you're like, calm down. Nothing's even started yet, and people are losing their shit. Like, legit, nothing has even started yet, and people are out of their mind.
I want to
call me a podcast boy. Thanks.
I want to end the show, but comments keep coming in. Carlos saying Beatty, McNeil, Parada, Williams for Soto. That's not unrealistic, and that doesn't hurt us. I will agree with one point. It doesn't hurt us. It is very unrealistic. The Padres do not. The Padres don't want Beatty. They don't want McNeil. I don't care how team friendly he is. Now, I think that McNeil is tradable. I do. I think McNeil is tradable because his contract is very team friendly, and they could trade him. A team like Seattle makes sense. The Padres don't want McNeil. They don't want any of his money. They just took out a $50 million loan to pay payroll. They don't want anybody's money. They don't want Parada. Maybe Williams. Maybe they
don't want Parada because they got Ethan Salas, who's a 17-year-old phenom, who's one of the top prospects in baseball.
Correct. And the same reason they don't want Beatty is the same reason they don't want McNeil, because they have a glut of infielders. Everybody they have is an infielder. And then, so maybe you could say they would entertain a concept of Jet Williams, but you'd have to do better than that. You'd have to do better. You can't, that's not enough. No one wants Beatty, not even. We tried to pull it up at the same time. No one wants Beatty, not even Beatty. Me and Ibby tried to pull up that comment at the same time from Carson. Okay, so, Ibby, I think that's enough for today. I think we're at an hour and 25 minutes. We both have things to do. You have a family you're ignoring.
Don't put it like that. I did a lot of work today. Come on, don't give me that. I did a lot of good stuff.
Okay, I mean, listen, I could do this all day. I don't have anything to do until I have a softball game at 9 p.m. West Coast time when everybody else is going to be sleeping. No, I think this is a good place to stop the show this week. I'm happy that we're back to it. We will be back basically every week, barring something unforeseen, through the entirety of the offseason. We may take a break like maybe Christmas week, but honestly, depending on what happens, maybe not even.
I think we're going to do our best to be as consistent as we can, because the offseason, it's always fun. There's always something to talk about. Obviously, I'm pumped up mainly because, we've held consistently about 20 people in here for the entire time, which makes me happy, and mainly because we've been gone for a while, and then people came back. So there's a lot of times when you go away, you're not sure who's actually going to come back. But the fact that we were, I think we had a high point of like 25, 26 today, which makes me happy. And just in general, thank you to everyone who was obviously here today, but also, the month off, I put in a good amount of work to the channel, and I wanted to make sure that we kept things fresh, and I wanted to make sure we kept on building and not lose anything that we sustained up until that point, because I knew we were going to be gone for a while. Doing the shorts, they've been killing it. I'm very happy of that. We gained about 30 plus subs over that time. So no matter what, and I think we brought about 11,000 views to the channel over that month off. So I'm very pumped with that. I'm going to keep on doing that. I have some more ideas that I'm going to keep pumping out, and I'm sure John's going to jump in as well now that he has the proper sign in when it comes to the YouTube and things like that. So we're going to keep going. We have a lot of ideas, and like I said on Ant's show, I'll reiterate it here, we have a lot of things on the horizon as well. So QBC pumped up, and a whole bunch of other things as well. So as always, thank you.
And couldn't have said it better myself. Rail saying thank you guys, glad to see your faces. Chris saying glad you guys are back. Rael saying thank you guys. Oh, I just pulled that one up. Sorry, that was the double. Subway to Shay saying love till Mets do his part. Love the chat. Great show tonight. So we appreciate all the love from all you guys. We appreciate the conversation. Douglas Barnes saying great chat, great show. Peace, y'all. Carlos, have a good one, everyone. I'm trying to read all these comments at once. And yes, it's my eyes are like spinning. And this I do want to bring up special QBC pre-show. Yes, perhaps we can do something like that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do that.
We'll talk to Keith about that. We'll get it set up. We'll do something fun. Special definitely. QBC pre-show. A lot of fun stuff coming up with this show. We will have guests. I heard John bought a kangaroo in Australia. No, but I did eat one.
What a heel turn.
I pet one day and then I ate one the next day, because I'm nothing if not a man of balance. I went to a nature preserve, and I was like, I'm going to feed kangaroos from my bare hands, and I'm going to pet them, and they're adorable.
John was a photographer taking all these nice pictures. The next thing you know, he eats one.
then I'm like, I'm gonna eat one. You know, I didn't eat the same one that I played with. That's cruel.
I was gonna say, Jesus Christ.
Well, no, that was like, imagine that. Like, you just go and you'd be like, I want that one. Give me that one. Chris Ferraro, apparently, John, my girlfriend, is horrified. Patty in NYC, I'm horrified.
You ate a kangaroo. Like, that was just fun. Oh my God.
People can't believe I ate kangaroo. I would say it's not great. Also, by the way, okay. I know I said I was going to end the show, but whatever. So you should know this about kangaroos in Australia, just to be clear. It's not like I ate like a bald eagle. Like, they're not endangered. Okay. Kangaroo in Australia are like deer here. They are
That's insane. That's crazy.
Everywhere. They're on the side of the road. You can hit one with your car. I'm not sure if you guys have seen like viral videos. If you like run into a kangaroo in the wilderness, it's going to lure your dog into a body of water and try to drown it. Like, it is
Smart,
like kangaroos are intense. And, you know, and they're all over the place. And, you know, when in Rome, people out there eat them. And so, you know, you got to eat them. Yeah. Chris Farrar saying this is a new show now. It's totally different. John's Australia Adventures. And saying tastes like chicken. It actually does not taste like chicken. It's more like beef. They are very, God, they're such muscular animals that when I had it, the chef was like, how do you want, or the waiter was like, how do you want it cooked? And I was like, I usually eat things like, you know, burgers and stuff, medium rare. And they were like, well, the chef recommends it seared rare. And I was like, okay. They were like, because anything like that, anything more than that, and it like overcooks and you can't even bite into it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm eating this bloody piece of kangaroo meat. So was fine. It was fine. Yeah. No Vegemite sandwiches. Actually, yes, I did have a Vegemite sandwich. I have a hot take on Vegemite. Do you guys just want to hear about more stories from Australia real quick? I have a hot take on Vegemite. It's not that bad. It's not as gross as people make it sound. When people try Vegemite here in the States, they do it wrong. Vegemite is supposed to be like just a tiny amount on like a cracker. And that's it. It's like a little dab. If you eat too much, it's gross. So anyway, Patty in NYC saying, oh my God, goodbye. Listen, you guys asked, so I was going to bring it up. Okay. One day I'll tell you guys more about the strange and exotic things I have eaten all over the world. That is not a euphemism. I've eaten some weird food. And that's it. All right. Chris Ferraro saying, I love how John's face is beat red at the moment. Yes. Cause, all right, Christ. Anyway, this has been a fun show. Got off the rails there at the end.
Still fun.
I love you all. I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Till Mets Do His Part. We'll see you next week. I want to thank the Premier Podcast Network. We're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming on Twitter. You know where to find us. We love you guys. We will talk to you later. Peace.